Good evening, colleagues. Dumelang, Sanbonani Khoyenant. I am so pleased to welcome you all to this Vice-Chancellor's Open Lecture, which the University of Cape Town is delivering online. This lecture was established to provide an opportunity for anyone, whether or not they are connected to UCT, to hear firsthand from people who have distinguished themselves in their respective areas of expertise. These are people who inspire us to greatness. By hosting this platform online, we make it possible to include alumni and other friends of the UCT community across South Africa and the world. UCT has hosted a broad range of experts, including this evening's esteemed speaker, Mr. Fred Swaniker, the founder and chief executive of African Leadership Group. He is recognized as one of the top 15 emerging social entrepreneurs in the world. The World Economic Forum has named him as a young global leader. He's a TED Fellow and a Fellow of the Aspen Institute. Mr. Swaniker will share his views with us on the impact of the African youth on the fourth industrial revolution, a topic close to his heart and top of his mind. I mean, it's interesting. Usually people talk about the impact of the fourth industrial revolution on Africa or the youth of Africa. And Fred is doing it the other way around. The impacts of the African youth on the fourth industrial revolution. He founded the African Leadership Group to usher in a new era of ethical entrepreneurial leaders across our continent. And over the past 15 years, he has founded and led the African Leadership Academy, African Leadership University, African Leadership Network, and The Room, which is a community of global leaders who are committed to unlocking opportunities for undiscovered talent, starting in Africa. His big dream is to develop 3 million young African leaders by 2035. By that year, those leaders may well be guiding a far different world than the one we are living in today. The fourth industrial revolution continues to change how we live and work. Along with the rest of the world, Africans need to make hard choices about how we can slow down climate change. And we need to confront the root causes of poverty and inequality, sexual and gender-based violence, and other economic and social ills. We need to make our continent a safe place for our children to grow up, get the food and healthcare they need, and the education that will give their lives meaning and purpose. This includes education in how to make the most of the technologies that the fourth industrial revolution will introduce. Thanks to the ability to work remotely, we stand at the threshold of a historic opportunity. Africa News reported last month that Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt lead the continent in providing software development talent, and that 38% of African developers work for at least one company based off the continent. Africa has the youngest working population of any continent, with an average of 19. And by 2035, we will have the largest workforce of any other continent, numbering about 1.1 billion people. This is a landscape that Fred Swaniker wants us to cultivate for the benefit of our continent and our children. Mr. Swaniker, welcome. And thank you for joining us this evening and for agreeing and accepting our invitation. We look forward to hearing from you tonight and engaging with you. So over to you, the platform is yours.
Yes, so thank you very much, Vice-Chancellor, for inviting me for this esteemed event. I'm really delighted to have a conversation with you and everyone who's listening about a topic that, as you mentioned, I'm very, very passionate about, which is African youth and the role that they can play in the fourth industrial revolution, which is a very special time that the whole world is going through. There've been, different industrial revolutions which have really moved the world forward. At some point, that's the first one was when sort of the steam engine was developed, and that really moved the world forward. And then you had, more recently, the information technology revolution. And now we're in this phase which is really being driven by fields like artificial intelligence and robotics and data science, and there's a whole new digital transformation that the world is going through. And on the one hand, it's causing tremendous disruptions, but it's also creating some exciting opportunities. And so I'm an optimist. And today I want to talk to you about something that I'm very excited about, is that the role in which African youth can play in this moment that the world is in. Now, to start with, let's contrast where Africa is compared to the rest of the world. The rest of the world, the whole world, is really aging, right? So you look at these headlines: India's population is starting to shrink sooner than expected. China's population. In Europe, this quote here says the only sustainable solution against the extinction of Europe is to increase the birth rate. They're not having enough babies in the rest of the world. For any organization, any government to move forward, for any company to make progress, three things need to come together. You need ideas, what's the service you're going to offer as a company, what's the problem you're solving as a government or as a company. You need capital, right, to fund this project or your company. And then you need people, you need talent. Today we live in a world, especially in the rest of the world, where capital is abundant. Interest rates are at record lows. There's billions of dollars that were pushed into the ecosystem by governments as a result of the COVID response to keep economies afloat. So there's, companies do not even know what to do with all the capital that's available. There's so much cash that's available globally. Talent is a constraint now to global growth. That's the big thing that's blocking so many companies from moving forward, and so many governments from moving forward. And of these, the most critical shortage is shortage for technology talent, because the world is going through digital transformation. It was happening before COVID, but COVID has accelerated that transformation. So when you look at these headlines, Amazon needs 29 million people in the next decade to work in cloud computing. Salesforce needs about 9 million people. Germany has a shortage of 1 million people in the technology field. Cybersecurity has a shortage of 3 million people. These are huge, huge numbers. And so the question is, where are these people going to come from? And that is the big, big challenge that the whole world is facing. And one of the things that this is resulting in is there's very low retention of staff, especially technology talent. They just jump around from company to company, and it's very difficult for companies to build stable teams and to create stable cultures. They're expensive because whenever it's basic economics, whenever there's more demand than the supply, the price of something goes up. So people who are in technology are being paid huge sums of money, and companies are no longer able to afford it. Especially, when you think about some companies in Africa, they can't afford to hire tech talent, and companies globally are struggling to pay what technology talent needs because there's such a shortage of that talent. So there's a huge, huge shortage of this talent, and this is how it's really hurting society and hurting companies. So as a result, we have unfulfilled hopes, we have unfulfilled dreams for companies, for governments, and for the world at large. Human progress is being limited. Our Wakanda cannot happen, right? All the dreams of progress that we have in society is not happening because technology has potential for transforming society. But without technology talent, we cannot deploy all these potential solutions. We cannot bring e-health to people. We cannot bring e-education. And so where do we go from here? They say, Albert Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. The world today keeps chasing the same people in this limited pool of technology talent. And as I said, the price of this talent keeps going up and they can't even fill the roles. So we can't keep doing that over and over and over again. The world needs a different solution. So we have to change, I believe, where we look for talent and how we look for talent. We can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. So starting first with where. It's time to look for new sources of talent. Where do I believe this talent is going to come from? If you look at Africa today, the continent only has 2.6% of the world's software engineers. Globally, there are 26.5 million software engineers. The US has 4.4 million. India has the largest number at 5.8 million. We have 2.6% of the world's software engineers. Yet, when you look at the population of Africa, we're going to be 40% of the world's population by the end of the century. And by 2035, we're going to have the largest workforce in the world, 1.1 billion. And our workforce larger than China, workforce larger than India. And as I mentioned earlier, a young, vibrant population. For Africa to step into this untapped, it is really today the largest pool of untapped, abundant talent in the world. And so, for example, we started at the African Leadership Group developing software engineers, 50 software engineers. Today, we're training 51,000 software engineers. In the whole of Africa, last year, 2021, 27,000 software engineers were developed by Africa. Within 1 week, we raised 20,000 software engineers into a program called ALX. It's a very intense program for 1 year where software engineers code for 70 to 100 hours a week in collaboration with the Silicon Valley School. We're training Silicon Valley caliber engineers in Africa. And we have grown by 1,000 times in just 12 months. This shows how much of this talent is just sitting there waiting to be tapped into. And so this is really what the world needs to be looking at. This is where African youth, there's a tremendous opportunity for what I believe is our greatest asset as a continent, the youth of Africa. This heat map shows where these software engineers are based. You can see all over Africa, very dense, and we're doing all of this right now completely online. And this is another thing that COVID has made possible, right? We can actually unlock this talent at speed, scale, and cost never seen before, thanks to COVID, right? And you can see that even Africans in the diaspora are starting to enroll in our programs beyond Africa, but most of these 50,000 are on the continent, all across Africa, learning to be software engineers. And you can just see the hunger that youth have, but also just how much this talent pool is, how big it is, how abundant it is. But as we do this, one of the things that we're learning when it comes to unleashing the potential of new talent, like in technology, education is not enough. One of the things we believe in the African Leadership Group is that 3 things need to come together to really unleash the potential of talent. First is we need to find people with potential. This means going beyond academics to find people who have courage, because this is, changing the world requires you to be able to go against the status quo sometimes. You need imagination. Can you imagine better ways of doing things, to be a problem solver, right? We need people with passion. They need resilience. People who, when they get knocked down, they get picked up again. They stand up, they pick themselves up, they keep going. They don't just give up, right? Because doing something hard requires resilience. And then finally, we need people who have good values. Can they tell right from wrong? Do they have integrity? And so these are the things that we believe we need to look for in people, not just their academic potential. Academics may be important, but we need to go beyond academics to find people with the potential to really learn. Then we need to develop that potential. We need to develop this talent. One of the things we believe is that we have to go beyond the classroom. So we try to follow the 10-20-70 rule. 10% of learning comes from the classroom, 20% from peers and mentors and coaches, 70% from experience. Research shows that this is the way humans learn best, right? So the Center for Creative Leadership studied different high-performing leaders in different fields, and they asked them to attribute their growth as leaders to different ways of learning. And they said only 10% of their learning came from the classroom. Yet today, most education models are focused on that classroom, and therefore we're only unlocking 10% of human potential. We need to go beyond the classroom and give people real-world projects to do. So, for example, in the software engineers that we're training, every day they have to build software, and they're not just learning in the theory, but they're actually building, and they have to deliver projects, and they learn on the job. This is how talent should be developed. We have to go beyond the classroom to really, as the African youth, if we're going to unleash this potential. So people come out with practical experience in the real world, having done real projects, having learned in peer groups, and having learned how to work as teams. Because when you go into the real world, you're going to be expected to work in teams. You're not learning by yourself. You're not doing projects by yourself. So we need to simulate that in the training that they undergo. And you're going to be doing real projects. You're not going to be doing theory. So you have to give people and assess them not just on exams, but on projects that they've actually done. And then the final thing that we need networks. No matter how much is developed, if you don't have access to the right networks, someone who can mentor you, who can give you your first internship, who can invest in you if you're starting a venture, who can open doors if you're an entrepreneur to help you find your first customer, who can join you in your organization as a co-founder, you will not be able to get to your full potential. And so one of the things we do in the African Leadership Group is we invest very heavily in networks. We bring together networks from Africa, from around the world. Our ambition is to develop 3 million leaders in the next 15 years. And connect them to each other and to also powerful networks that can allow them to unleash their potential. But as we look at the potential for youth more broadly, or any young person who's on this call, I want you to think about not only getting education, but developing a network. Invest in relationships. Spend time getting to know your peers. Spend time getting to know people who have social capital, and building those relationships and showing that you're a doer, not just a talker. Because Africa has too many talkers, and we need more doers. And you need to build a reputation with people in your network. You have to know people. You have to build relationships. And so we need to not only invest in creating talent with skills, but we also need to invest in creating networks to allow them to get the social capital that they need to achieve their potential. Over the last 20 years, we have been developing leaders. And we think this is an exciting opportunity for African youth to play, to become not just engineers, but to become digital leaders. So we talk about this tree. Our vision here can be quite accurately represented by a tree, where instead of just taking someone and throwing them straight into a software engineering program, we believe we need to start with a foundation. Give them a base of training, of mindset change in leadership, so that we start first with a 6-month program where people learn leadership skills, critical thinking, communication, project management. They learn how to work in teams, how to lead themselves, manage their own emotions, how to analyze data and make decisions with it. And this is very important because we don't want to create engineers who do not have values and who do not understand ethics and who don't understand the societal implications of some artificial intelligence that could, really destroy society in different ways. And then they go into the core software engineering program, where in our case, where the program that we're offering, these 50,000 engineers that we're developing and soon to grow. Every month we add 20,000 more into our program. They go through 100 hours a week of training for 12 months. This is very difficult, and we make it intentionally so because the world needs to know that Africans work hard and that Africans are capable of performing at the highest levels. And so we want to make this not an easy program, but a hard program. And if people can make it through 12 months of 70 to 100 hours a week of coding and doing and building real software, then we know that these people can compete on the global stage. And then finally, we have specializations, which is, you can think of as the branches of the tree, right? Where you might have a 3 to 6 month specialization in things like cybersecurity, product management, Internet of Things, cloud computing, data science, autonomous driving, or blockchain, or cryptocurrency. All these technological trends that are changing all the time. We need to be flexible and agile. So that the branches of the tree is where the agility and the flexibility comes. So this is how we are envisioning capturing this opportunity, unlocking potential for the African youth to really play in this 4th industrial revolution. And so today, as we look at where we stand as a continent, I believe that what Y2K did for India, COVID has the potential to do for Africa. Many of the people on this call might not know what Y2K is, right? If you're young, if you're born in the year 2000 or just before that, you might not know what Y2K is. Y2K stands for the year 2000. There was a bug when the first software systems were built in the 50s and 60s. People couldn't think forward and imagine that one day we would reach the year 2000. So a lot of the code didn't know the difference between 1900 and 2000. It just had 00. That was so what was going to happen? The whole world was scared that on, and it was also known as the millennium bug. On January 1st, 2000, all the systems would revert back to thinking that the world was in 1900. And so the world was scrambling, and every single computer code needed to be rewritten to be able to represent and recognize the year 2000. And so when that happened, the world again faced a technology shortage, and people went to India and they started, setting up and recruiting software engineers from India, and India invested heavily in developing software engineers. And today, India has 5.8 million software engineers, the largest in the world. And Indian developers and technologists are running Microsoft, they're running Google, they're running so many companies around the world. And every single major global company has operations in India. Where is the continent that has large untapped population of tech talent? Africa. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the huge, tremendous opportunity that African youth have. You cannot function today as a leader in any field without understanding technology. Every company today is becoming a technology company. Every government today has to become a technological savvy. And so a competence of education today is simply technology. We need to reform our education systems in university. It needs to become just a basic standard language that everyone knows. Like I know English, I know math, I need to understand how to code. Governments need to invest in broadband to make sure that people all across Africa in rural areas can access these incredible opportunities. And electricity, basic infrastructure like electricity and broadband can unleash huge work opportunities for African youth. How can this happen? In 3 ways. 1, African talent, thanks to COVID, can now work remotely for global companies. Before, when we were trying to create work opportunities for young people in Africa, we were constrained to our continent. We were waiting for African economies to grow, African governments to create better policies, African companies to grow. Now, the world is literally the oyster for a software engineer, for a young African. You can be an engineer sitting in Ghana and working for Zara in Spain. You can be a UX designer sitting in South Africa, working for Microsoft in London. And this is a tremendous opportunity. You no longer have to leave your country. You no longer have to leave your home. You no longer have to leave your village. And you can get a very high-paying job all over the world. And this is an incredible opportunity for us to export our talent, but without the brain drain, where they can stay in Africa, right? So that's one pathway in which young people today can work remotely for global companies. And COVID opened up this opportunity where companies are suddenly much more open to hiring remote talent because everyone had to be working remotely. So, well, if you're working remotely in the US, you might as well be working remotely from Africa. What also we're starting to see as an exciting trend is that global companies can now come and set up operations in Africa. Microsoft just in the last couple of weeks has announced 2 development centers, one in Kenya, one in Nigeria, where they're hiring software engineers to build software engineer products for Microsoft globally. And when you go to Israel, you see this. Intel has 20,000 software engineers in Israel. Facebook has people, Apple, Google. We need to do the same in Africa and start to attract global companies to set up operations here and hire this talent that's abundant. And then the final thing is, yes, we can have a few of our young people move and leave Africa physically to go and work abroad. For example, 7 of our graduates from our programs recently got jobs to move to London, and they're moving physically. And you might say, well, why should people leave Africa? I believe a small fraction, 5%, 10% of them can leave. Brain drain is only a problem when you're not producing a lot of talent. But if we're producing massive abundant talent like we're doing now in the African Nation Group, then if 5% of them leave, the other 95% are still left in Africa. And they can bring back ideas later, they can remit income back to the continent. And these people who do leave can become just like those who left India. They ended up running Microsoft, running Google, and all these other technology companies. And then some of them came back with their ideas and with capital, and they helped India's technology sector to become even more vibrant, and they grow the economy. And we can similarly see that kind of thing happening here in Africa. So it's a very, very exciting time. There is no other continent that has the talent potential that we do. And we cannot lose this opportunity as a continent. So you may be wondering, how are we doing this? How are we training, go from, how do we grow by 1,000 times to train from 50 engineers to 50,000 engineers in just 12 months? And we're just getting started. How are we going to train millions of people in the next decade? Let me show you how we're doing this. This is an example of a person in Ethiopia who's learning to be a software engineer through us right now.
Hi, my name is Kubert Bayu, and I'm in the Alex Halberton Software Engineering Program January cohort. My mission is to utilize mobile development to ignite positive change in the continent of Africa. Alex is the toughest and most exciting educational experience I've ever had in my life, and here's why. My background in college is I studied civil engineering, and I did my master's in the same field. But then I was 7 months pregnant, working dispassionately in a highway design firm, when all of a sudden, a big revelation hit me like a bolt of lightning that computers were what I loved, And then from that point on, I just knew that programming was my passion for life. Once I discovered my passion, I started to go out and talk to different people in this industry and let them know of my interests, and then that's how I got sent a link to the LX application website. I prepared for and passed the 3 phases of the application, which was very tough itself, but then it took me up in a whirlwind journey of 70-hour weeks and more than 40 peers with similar interests as mine. It has been the most excruciating, exciting, but enjoyable experience. So now I'm doing it full-time, along with raising my baby. It's a totally online program that has been convenient. I plan to use the knowledge and skills that I get from ALEX and apply it in entrepreneurial projects that align with my personal interests of mobile, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. So this is my story.
So there you have it. This is a woman who is sitting in Ethiopia, learning how to be a software engineer. Let me share with you a couple of other stories. David Mutene from, we just watched the video of Kibet Bayu from Ethiopia. David is a young man from Kenya who was attending a university in Nairobi, and his family couldn't afford to pay fees for him. I think it was only about $500 a year, and he couldn't afford it. So he dropped out in his second year. But he thankfully found our program, enrolled in it a year ago, to the UK, and they're going to be paying him about 70,000 US dollars, which is about, at the current exchange rate, over R1 million, right? 1.5 million rand or so. Imagine a young person, 22, who had dropped out of college, now earning so much and moving to London. What can he do for the African continent? Then we have Firdaus Salim, right? This is a young woman, lives in a rural area in the outskirts of Mombasa, Kenya. Before, we would never been able to reach her with our previous bricks and mortar model of African Leadership University, African Leadership, or ALX. But during the pandemic, we started training the software engineering talent in the way you just saw in the video, leveraging technology and doing it at very low cost and very high speed. Her mother is literate, has never been to school, and she would have been destined to such a life before. But thanks to this program now, she's learning, she's coding for 100 hours a week, and she's becoming a full stack software engineer. She's right now in the final round interviews for internships with Google in Japan and Google in Ireland. And this again, these are just 3 stories of this tremendous potential that African youth have and that we are just waiting to capture. And it would be, we cannot lose this moment. And so, in conclusion, again, we are sitting at a historic time where the world is desperate for exceptional talent. Africa has that large pool of untapped talent. And as the 4th industrial revolution takes place, this could be a moment to take the global stage and to really create tremendous opportunities and to transform Africa in ways that have never been imagined.
Fred, thank you for the talk, but more than anything, for the dream. I mean, there is no question that our young continent is a huge advantage. And as we talk about the talent here, but I'm wondering whether that it's an important variable. But surely there are other variables that we need to be working on, because I'm thinking this is a variable that needs people like you and I to work on. And then there's another variable. If you have talent or you have the youth, but you don't have infrastructure, appropriate infrastructure in the country, which I think if you look across the continent, I sometimes feel like probably that's what India has one leg up on us, particularly in many African countries. How do you think we still have, there's still potential to develop this leadership, this talent at the scale that we want, even without the infrastructure. And how many young people can get access to your training, for example, online, given infrastructure challenges in the continent?
That's an excellent question, that you raised, that we need a concerted effort to really bring this whole potential to life. It needs to be a continental priority. Today, India might have modern infrastructure, but when they started on this 20 years ago, they didn't have this. Where we are in Africa today with the mobile phone revolution, that we have leapfrogged the whole world, right? 800 million people have mobile phones in Africa, right? If they can find a phone to send text messages and go on Facebook, they can learn, right? So you have the infrastructure that is there. It is not perfect. There's still a lot to be done, but it is. I think we're starting off in a much better position than where India was 20 years ago. You go to a country like Rwanda, the whole country has 4G broadband, right? And a lot of countries in Africa actually have, through mobile, they can reach everywhere. What is missing, what is expensive is the data, and we have challenges like the electricity, but even that can be overcome by, for example, leveraging solar. We don't have for government to lay electrical cables to villages. We can leapfrog and start to use solar energy, and like you're seeing a lot of companies in East Africa doing, Mkopa, Phoenix, and so forth. So I think that with a concerted effort, governments making this their #1 priority. Yeah. Because if governments do not invest in this, these same young people will be in the streets rioting. They will not be voting for them. So governments need to realize that this is a way for them to stay in power and a way for them to actually drive economic growth. Because suddenly, if you have a population that is earning foreign currency, then that's how we're going to grow our economies in Africa, because there'll be a spending power with people who are being paid well, so they can get more taxes and they can get, the entrepreneurial growth in the countries. So I think that yes, it is not going to be just education. We need government policy to invest in the infrastructure. We need also government policy to make it easy for those foreign government companies to come and set up operations, and make it easy for them to invest in the countries and to get licenses and work permits and everything for this, to allow this to happen. We also need to build the brand of Africa as the next generation of talent, and to build relationships globally, and to do business development with all these companies that need this technology talent. So there's a whole ecosystem that needs to come together to make it work. But if that ecosystem comes together, then we're sitting on a tremendous opportunity for the continent.
Absolutely. So who's ensuring that? That's, is there some institution, body, or organization at the level of the AU that's making sure that
well, no one is doing it at the continental level. There are different pockets of activity happening. For example, business processing, outsourcing sector, the BPO sector, and they are trying to. There is an association that's been set up, and actually South Africa last year was voted the #1 outsourcing destination in the world because of some of the work that they're doing. You look at MasterCard Foundation, and we are one of their partners in doing this. Different pockets are trying to do this, but what we need is, every single government should make this the priority to really unleash, digital Africa, right? And with this, it will solve their biggest problem, which is what to do with 1 billion people who will not have jobs by in 15 years, right? And this is one of the ways. If you can get 50 to 100 million of them working and earning, very high salaries, it will create opportunities for another 500 million. It's something that I will be trying to drive in my role through the African Issue Group, to lobbying governments and in the African Union and so forth, that we need to make this a tremendous priority for everyone, because it is a huge opportunity, and we would be, history will judge us badly if we did not capture this opportunity.
Fred, another point that you raised, which I agree completely with, when you say education is not enough. If we want to develop this cohort of leaders and ensure that Africa leads the world in this area, then you say we have to find people with potential, with passion, and so on and so forth. We must develop that talent, and then we must connect that talent to the right networks, because without the right networks, that talent won't flourish. And I'm thinking we've got so many institutions and so on across the continent. What does it mean, the right network? Does it mean business, entrepreneurs who are working in the area? Are you envisaging, I mean, if you were given an opportunity to advise the largest university on the African continent, let's just say the Open University in Nigeria and the University of South Africa, because they've got the largest number of students, if you like. What would you say? Because let's just say they've got the largest number. We've got, how do we help them connect to the right net?
You see, today most universities see themselves as knowledge enterprises, and they focus on research and training, and do not really think about what happens to the talent that they produce afterwards. And their incentive systems and regulation and accreditation, when they look at quality assurance, they look at a lot of inputs. How many professors do you have with PhDs? How many library books do you have in your library? How many computers do you have in your lab? They even look at, in some cases, you need 100 hectares of land to be considered a university. What do those things have to do with quality? And they're not measuring things like how many jobs are you creating? What are employers saying about your graduates? How many companies are coming out? Those are the things that universities need to be assessed on. And so the universities, the most forward-thinking ones, will start to say, okay, I serve to solve societal problems. That's why universities exist. So the biggest problems facing society in Africa is youth unemployment. And so with that, then universities need to reinvent themselves to go beyond just, being knowledge enterprises, to think about how they can be skills enterprises and opportunity enterprises, and to start investing in relationships with companies, bringing the real world into the classroom, allowing the students to do internships in organizations, and building social capital. Vice-Chancellors need to be spending time networking, bringing CEOs onto campus, arranging people from industry to mentor the young people. We need to connect young people to social capital, because like I said, 75% of jobs are never advertised. It's filled by word of mouth. Spend as much time investing in your networks and social capital for your talent as you do on the education, because otherwise all the education will go to waste. People will come out and there will be nowhere for them to go. And today you find 50% of university graduates in Africa are unemployed. And that's because we're not investing in the social capital that they need to actually find opportunity.
Fred, I want us to pursue this question a bit more, because it seems to be that you may be making an argument against this university as it is currently known. Someone is being a bit more general to me, is asking the question, is saying, what advice would you give me about what I should do at UCT? So I was pointing at UNISA and the Open University in Nigeria, whatever, because I thought, they've got large numbers. I was removing myself out of this, And
the people are not letting you off the hook.
they are putting you on the spot to give me advice here with the whole world listening.
Here's what I would advise you, Vice Chancellor. Firstly, you need to reimagine your university.
Yeah.
I believe that we cannot do business as usual.
Yes.
We don't have time. We don't have the resources. We have a lot of constraints. And one of the things I really believe that's constraints drives innovation. So we have to reimagine, we have to reinvent. So if you were to build UCT for, not think about what it has been, you've got a wonderful storied history for hundreds of years. But if you said, actually, not what have you done in the past, but what do you need to do for the future? Would you look the way you look today? And if you started looking that way, I would bet you that you would be very different. You would start to think about, how are you educating young people? Because you see, education in the past used to be about acquisition of facts and figures. That's because we lived in a world where information was scarce. So you had to go to the library to get it from the book or from the head of the professor. Today, we live in a world where knowledge is ubiquitous. Someone sits in a classroom can access more information than the professor in the room on their mobile phone. So how do you reimagine education to put more power in the hands of your students to learn to teach themselves and to teach each other? How do you bring more project-based learning into your university? I would get rid of exams and assess people based on projects and feedback from employers and feedback from their their peers. I would be much more interdisciplinary in the way that people do. So, for example, today people go and they study academic majors in history and science and chemistry and so forth. But most of the jobs that you do have nothing to do with what you study in college, because the world is changing so fast. The knowledge you get quickly becomes out of date. So I would be thinking about how do you actually focus your university on learning how to learn and learning how to solve problems versus memorizing facts and figures. And then you can produce. And then, of course, finally, I would be making sure that, for example, as a prerequisite for everyone to graduate is they must do a 1-year program in software engineering and in coding. Get people to learn how to build technology and to think about product management and interaction design, all the things that are going to shape the world of the future. That would be my advice to you, madam.
And listen, I mean, I'm with you there. The issue of learning how to learn, critical thinking, problem solving, absolutely. Universities do that. And then the new thing that you're introducing is everyone has to do software engineering. I'm thinking, well, we would need to take academics first through that.
Exactly.
Just digital literacy in some cases, just digital, not even beyond, because I think even that is not necessarily in place. But I'm with you. But here's the thing. I mean, university.
Sorry, one more thing I would do is I would embed entrepreneurship into your program and make sure that young people are coming out not looking for jobs, but as job creators, because you are educating the elite of the elite at UCT.
Absolutely.
Your graduates should not be job seekers.
Yeah.
They should be job creators. And so the whole university, I would orient it around, you cannot graduate without founding a company, without at least being a part of a founding team. Come up with an idea, create a business plan, and your graduation requirement is pitching that program to venture capitalists. Doesn't mean you'll get the funding to start, but at least everyone trying to be an entrepreneur. Those are the kinds of things I was telling you to do.
Great point. And we do have some programs that do that. There's some programs that do that there's no teaching. They get a problem at the beginning. They've got to come out with a solution at the end, pitching and whatever. And some at the end of the program, they have a business. So completely. And the idea of an entrepreneurial university is with us. We can talk more about it. But here's the thing, Fred. You're talking about a university. I mean, there's a tendency. So every time, I'm all in for the future of higher education. That we've got to rethink the programs that we offer. We've got to reimagine how we package them, who needs them, why do we still want to do them that way. But I'm not thinking only in terms of UCT. I'm just thinking in terms of the idea of a university. That the idea of a university, I keep thinking, what will die if the idea of a university dies completely? So rather than throw in the baby with the bathwater, it seems to me that we've got to reimagine some of the things that we're doing in the university, because we still need, our society needs a space such as the university, a space of free ideas, free thinking. I mean, there's no space like that. Churches don't do that. Political organizations don't do that. Even youth clubs don't do that. They're all political aligned, whatever. It's only at the university where a child of a migrant worker can be on the same space with the child of a millionaire. They pray to different gods and eat different things, and they can be in the same class and compete on an equal level footing and in a way creates space where they can think about problems of the world and together imagine a new world. Not necessarily new jobs, not a new world in terms of jobs, but in other ways. So I feel like if we change the university and make it only be concerned about producing employers and employees, creators of jobs, and so on and so forth, we center it only around that, we will be losing something because society will lose that critical voice. Don't you think so, though?
Yeah, so I don't think it's an either-or situation. So one of the most amazing things about universities is that they're places where people come to grow up, and where they build relationships, and they get some of that social capital that's going to be so crucial to their future. So we shouldn't lose those things about universities. But imagine a university, less as a place where knowledge is given, but a place where knowledge is shared amongst the peers, and where people apply their learning to solve real world problems versus just, when they get theories. The whole university thinking like, okay, we're going to build things, for 3 years, not just for some short project. And, and really orienting the university around solving problems. So for example, one of the things we do at the African Leadership University, I'm just giving this as an example, is we've gotten rid of academic majors. We don't have academic majors.
You don't have academic majors, so you don't have a Bachelor of Arts in History. What do you have?
We ask our students to big problems that we need to solve on the continent, like healthcare, climate change, education, infrastructure, governance, youth unemployment. And then the opportunities are places where Africa has been blessed, where we have unusual competitive advantages, but we haven't captured them yet, like agriculture, the empowerment of women, the arts and creative industry, regional integration, and so forth. And we say, hey, don't choose an academic major, declare a mission for your life. Create your learning experiences around those problems. But it's a different way of aligning that, and giving that, the space for them to grow. And so what I'm saying is universities do have a role to play. But that role needs to change from the role they've been playing for 100 years. And most universities have not changed. And tradition is what is prized versus innovation. And that, I think, is not is limiting the potential of most universities in the world, not just in Africa.
Yeah, and earlier in your talk, it's also how universities are rewarded, because that also drives behavior of universities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not only how they're rewarded by government, but how they're measured and so on. I mean, we ranking systems don't look at these things, and of course, even the people who critique ranking systems are, it's other things. But let me read a question from Andre Young, who says, how do we connect universities to talent, both people and capabilities, opportunities, value chains, drive the living laboratory or ecosystems that create value for customers?
Excellent. I think we need to decentralize a university from something that we really think about the time and place for where learning works. So that is one way where you, for example, why not partner with organizations to give, especially now when you think about COVID, a lot of companies now have office space, which they're not using because their people are not coming back to work. They're working remotely. What if we embed students in those spaces and they're sitting there doing their work, but then companies are giving them real projects to do?
Yeah, but I got you in terms of this space, using space differently, but I guess it's also thinking differently about students and what, the work that they do at university, that they can build is doing different things.
Yeah, we need to break the barrier between the university and the real world, bring the real world into the classroom. So for example, getting, industry experts to come in and be resident in the university and teaching and sharing their real world knowledge and building relationships with the young people. Students doing projects. For example, at ALU, the students in the first year, they all have to work on projects like consultants to companies, and they get exposed to real world problems. In investing in bringing people into the community, right? So hosting events and constantly exposing and inviting people. A lot of universities today are like closed. It's like this ivory tower, you can't enter. Right? How do we break it? Make it open? Create a flow of people into that community, and then take those people out into the world as well. And so that that intersection will allow that social capital to be built, and then the ideas to flow. And I think we're going to see a reinvigoration of universities.
Right, and Andre has asked several questions, so I'm gonna read the next one. How do we get universities to assist students to give yourself a job where they disrupt the economic exclusion that is the experience we see for the last 60 years in Africa?
Entrepreneurship is a mindset more than a skill set. So a huge part of it is about getting young people to really, gain more confidence in themselves, to realize and to become problem solvers, right? And to start to see all the problems in their communities as opportunities. For example, Africa has 800 million people moving to cities in the next 40 years. That's a big problem. There's going to be housing problem, shortages, sanitation, traffic problems. Those are all problems, but at the same time, there are also opportunities because suddenly now you can be the person to come up with a venture that cleans up garbage. And as people are moving to cities, then you become a garbage billionaire. We spend $40 billion importing food into Africa that we have perfect conditions to grow. But yet today, the average age of a smallholder farmer in Africa is 60. And yet our population is 19. So young people are not going to agriculture. How do we get to really think about, all the different business opportunities that exist, like in agribusiness and so on, because people don't want to go and dig in the farm anymore, right? Agri-tech, agri-finance. So there's, there are ways you have to inspire young people to believe in themselves. You have to expose them to problems and have them to think about problems as opportunities for solutions. And then of course, to help them with social capital. Because it's not enough, like I said, just to, give them the mindsets and skill sets to be entrepreneurs. They need to be connected. So you have to help as institutions and as people with influence to connect those who have capital, those who have mentors, those who have ideas with those who need it. And universities are some of the most influential institutions in the world. Their alumni, their status with governments, and they don't use this influence for their students enough. How do we leverage that social capital to really create opportunities, help facilitate and create an ecosystem where you can increase the likelihood of young people creating jobs? And we're doing this in the African Leadership Group, and we find every young entrepreneur that we creates 13 jobs for other people, for other young people, right? So, there is a way that you can encourage, but also let's be clear, not every young person should be the founder. But if you get, every young person can work in an entrepreneur organization, often founded by their friend. What we're finding is that a young entrepreneur creates jobs for other young people. They don't hire old people, they hire their peers. An older entrepreneur hires older people. So if we get young people to become entrepreneurs, then they'll absorb. We're finding one entrepreneur we create absorbs 13 other young people, their peers. And that's a way to create, to get more people employed and so forth.
All right. Another question says we have 800 million mobile phones in Africa, better positioned in terms of infrastructure than India was in the last 2000. India 2000, that's what you said earlier. How do we leverage this in the face of challenges like connectivity and other infrastructural challenges?
Yeah, I mean, as we talked about earlier, this, we need to just put pressure on governments to invest in that infrastructure, because it will solve so many of the other problems, right? Governments shouldn't be spending money on going to war and some of the other frivolous things that they're spending money on. Invest in internet access and broadband. And if you do that, then you can unleash the potential of your people, because now they can get education for themselves at low cost. They can get healthcare at low cost. They can get, all these other services that before you are struggling to invest in. It reduces your cost of service delivery as a government. Then all the other pressures on my budget can go down, because now people can get much lower cost services. You can distribute. I don't need to now pay teachers and doctors to go to that rural area to provide education and healthcare. I can send it through the internet. And you get to so government needs to become a government priority, and then we can start to accelerate this tremendous potential that we have as a continent.
Here's a question to the point you were talking about the fact that you don't have a subject majors at ALU, and this person says, but how do the students acquire skills such as engineering skills or health if they don't concentrate on a course? We need mastery, so we shouldn't we be? Is this something that's specific to particular areas of study, or would you recommend that across disciplines that you don't have this kind of?
I would recommend that across disciplines because, as I mentioned earlier, most learning doesn't happen in the classroom. Most learning happens outside of the classroom. So if you look at medicine, for example, which is an area which requires real mastery, or language. Most language is not learned in the classroom, right? You learn language by doing, by practicing, by being immersed. That's how you learn the language. You don't learn it in sitting in lectures. I had so many years of French classes. I still can't speak French because I never was immersed in a community where I was forced to speak it. Right? If you throw me in France for 6 months, I'll learn French. And you give me 5 years of learning, I'll never learn French in the classroom. Medicine, the way medicine works, if you look at the way actual most medical programs work, most doctors will tell you that yes, they did their 1 year of theory, but where they really learned was the clinicals, when they started going into the the hospitals and working on patients every day, and that's when they really learn their craft. Very few people come out as from undergraduate programs as experts in anything, but if you've learned how to learn and you learned how to solve problems, then you will start to master your craft when you're actually applying it and learning in the real world. And today's world, where information is ubiquitous, all the facts and things that they need is at their fingertips on a device. So what we need to actually, yes, so they do need mastery. It's just they need mastery in a different set of things. Mastery in today's world is, are you a problem solver? Have you learned how to learn? Have you understood the power of technology? Have you developed skills as an entrepreneur? Those are the things you need to master. Are you a critical thinker? Are you a communicator? Do you know how to manage projects? Can you make decisions? That is what the world needs of you, not can I memorize this thing because the computer knows it better than you. Right? Because with artificial intelligence and automation, machines can do things way better than human beings. For example, there's image recognition technology that can do a better job at recognizing skin cancer than doctors who have got 7 years of training and 10 years of specialization. Now there's artificial intelligence that can, with image recognition, they can look at your skin and they do a better job of predicting whether you have skin cancer than that doctor. So now the doctor skills need to be in different places, right?
I agree to some extent, because it feels to me that you are almost on the edge of saying becoming a medical doctor. You can become a medical doctor through apprenticeship. You just do first year and then you're gonna learn the real job by being there with the doctors on the clinical platform. And I'm thinking, perhaps where you separate people who have real mastery and not is when an unusual condition comes, because then that's where the depth of your knowledge then gets tested, because it's not the usual things. I mean, and that's why we, probably if we got doctors from Cuba, threw them into Kailicha to manage HIV, AIDS, and TB, whatever, they wouldn't know what to do, even though they're doctors, even though they whatever, because this is not something that they deal with every day. They will be getting curveballs all the time, but they wouldn't learn it by apprenticeship in just 6 months and then they are in. So there's something about, I agree with problem solving and so on and so forth, but there's and critical thinking and all of that, but mastery and depth in one's disciplinary knowledge there are certain subjects, disciplines that you can't do without. And I happen to think that medicine is one of those, and engineering is one of those. I think investing is not one of those. I mean, of course, I've been reading the psychology of money, and so I've changed completely. It's not the same, right? You can have someone who's not trained in finance completely and becoming a major success in investing, but you wouldn't find a cardiologist who's just an ordinary medical doctor, didn't even specialize, and they become a well-renowned cardiologist. But in investments, you can have that. So there's something about
that cardiologist did not become world-class in the classroom. They became world-class by doing 200 operations.
True.
Or 1,000 operations.
To even start with the first operation, they needed that depth of knowledge. That's why we don't take the ordinary.
And if you think about it, I'll learn the theory of the aorta and blood and this blood vessel and veins versus arteries and whatever, and I'll look at the heart valves and whatever. That's all I'll learn in class. But I'm only really going to learn how the heart functions and how to do heart surgery when I'm there cutting, and I do 1,000 surgeries. That's when you become Professor Chris Barnard and you do, whatever. So that's really what I'm saying.
Fred, you're making me feel that that's why we have so many buildings falling down in Lagos, because there are people who are building who learned by whatever they, and then it's accepted that, it's going to fall apart. That's just what it is. That's
a different thing.
There's more questions that came in. How do we pivot to AI? How do we pivot the AI to support human intelligence and human execution whilst they are at university? How do we use AI to create actual learning gain and productivity whilst at university?
Well, that's a great question. I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that we need to ground all our technology education in first, a foundation of, ethics and values and leadership and entrepreneurship and so on. So we really start to understand the societal problems that are most critical to solve, and then build the technology, whether it's AI or any other thing, IoT, around those problems that we need to solve. I think too often we just create technology for technology's sake and say, I've got this cool technology, is there some way I can apply it? What if you start the other way around? Look at the problems that need to be solved, and then start to say, how can I use technology to solve those problems? Because technology is a tool, right? And where you direct that tool is a function of your values, your worldview, and the problems that you see in the world. And that's kind of how but if you haven't if you're not thinking about those problems, and you just think, how do I just get rich by building this platform, then you're going to create this technology and it won't go anywhere. So by grounding people in the big challenges that the world is facing and starting from there, and then of course learning what technology can do, then you start to marry the two and you really get powerful solutions.
Right. Here's a question from Kulekani Mkonazi, who says, Fred, thank you very much for this eye-opening lecture. The ALU motto, we do hard things. What does it look like on the ALU campus, and what can a UCT student like myself adopt that way of doing?
Excellent. So this whole motto of we do hard things comes from our belief that those of us who are lucky enough to get to a place like UCT, which includes you who's asking, and all of us who are on this call, the fact that you have internet, you have electricity, you have a device that you can get on this call means you are privileged. And the top 1% of the top 1%. And yes, maybe you came from an underprivileged background, but now you are privileged. You have gotten opportunities that very few people have. And so I say that the only way you can justify your privilege is by doing hard things and solving big problems for society. You shouldn't be doing small things, because otherwise you don't deserve this privilege. You need to create opportunities for others. And so it's a philosophy that we have. So at ALU, it's a culture. It's part of our culture. When people come, we're very clear that they're here not just to enrich themselves and become powerful and become leaders who serve themselves, but to serve others, to serve society. And we say, declare a mission for your life, and then they have to go out into the communities and research the problems that the people are facing and come up with innovative solutions and and actually implement them. And we put them in very difficult situations where they have to rise to the challenge. We don't believe in making things easy, so that they learn resilience. What a young person wants is not what they need. Right? Education is not like those. Most businesses, they say your customer is always right. I liken it to a gym. If you go to the gym and you want a six-pack, you want to look good, the way you're gonna get that is not by your gym instructor just says no, eat whatever you want and just come and relax and have a Coke when you're in the gym. No, they'll push you. They'll make you do push-ups and you will be hating that person, and you'll say this is horrible. But that's how you're going to get your six-pack, right? So education institutions need to create, while of course you need to nurture young people and build confidence, you also need to make them go through difficult things that they will not enjoy. But that will prepare them better for the real world. So an example, at ALU, in the beginning, we used to give our students, we used to guarantee them internships. We would go out and use our networks to get internships for them. And then I remember the first year, we had, our students were getting amazing internships. 3 were working for McKinsey, 3 were working for Bain, some of them even working for L'Oreal in Paris, the Standard Bank. They had all these great internships. So then the second class came along, and then I remember I was traveling and I called my team and I said, so how are we doing for internships this year? So, we've got several hundred internships that have come in, but they've only accepted 30 of them. I said, what's going on? And you had people who was like, no, I'm waiting. I'm going to turn down KPMG because I'm waiting for McKinsey.
Oh.
I was like, oh, no, you did not do that. And what I realized was that because we were trying to help, and giving them all these things, we were actually creating an entitlement. And we were actually not preparing them for the world of the future. So we took that away. We said, no, actually, we will help you get skills. We'll help you learn how to network. And we will help you to prepare your resume and all this, but we're not going to get you an internship. You need to go out there and knock on doors and learn how to hustle, because that is how what you're going to need to do for the rest of your life. And that is an example of doing hard things. You're actually preparing someone for the rest of their life versus just giving them what they want.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, Fred. And if we had time, maybe one day when we have a drink, we can talk about how you deal with the issues of mental health and so on, because I agree with you. Education is a process of transformation. Transformation is easy. It's going to be tough, and there's much more entitlement among our young people in the continent today. Any time, at least in my career as an academic. But there's also a lot of guilt from people who have never experienced poverty, or people who have achieved, who feel that, ouch, we've got to do this. And the world is structured in such a way that to feel for the poor, for the young, for the, so the idea of demanding and the sense of urgency to get things done is sort of not as pronounced as it is. Young people expect things to be done. So there's something there to learn, certainly to have a conversation about in terms of doing hard things. But the entitlement that you're talking about certainly is something to deal with on the continent. I want us to draw to the end, Fred, and there's lots of questions that are here, but I want to thank you for not just for the lecture, for the vision, but also for what you do, because you know, when you have a big dream such as this, when you want to achieve a big dream, this morning I wrote on my Twitter page that you cannot be trusted with the blessing unless you can handle the persecution. The persecution is not always from the people. Big dreams and wanting to achieve great things comes a huge cost that a lot of people do not see. You, the bearer of the dream, go through all of those persecutions as you push and make the tough decisions, and they are not always popular, but you keep going. And I think we need that kind of resilience, visionaries on the continent. So I thank you for doing that, because it will certainly give many others on the continent hope. So thank you very much for that. And we at UCT are your fans, right? So we'll be happy to host you here at some place to talk some. I'm particularly concerned about the role of universities, other institutions, and what universities and other higher education institutions will play in opening the way to a future workforce that will not only support industry, but will help lead our society, as you were saying, create new jobs. You know, that's our concern at UCT. It's not just producing graduates. So thank you very much for again challenging us in this way. Let me thank also my colleagues in communications and marketing department, as well as colleagues in ICTS, Nico and team. Thank you for your patience, for being there and making sure that you resolve the problem, but also thank you for organizing and managing this event so that it goes smoothly. And most of all, let me thank our audience. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for the questions that you have asked. Thank you for contributing to the discussions and in your thoughtful questions and comments. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Madam Vice-Chancellor. Thank you for having me.